The first crash came just after sunrise. I was halfway through my first mug of coffee when something slammed against my cabin door, hard enough to rattle the hinges and shake dust out of the rafters. I stepped onto the front deck, boots crunching on cold gravel, and found an official-looking envelope taped to the wood like a threat. The red stamp across the top read, "Eviction notice, HOA authority." Funny thing was, this cabin sat on private non-HOA property. I bought the place outright, deed and all. A voice cut through the crisp mountain air. "Get your things and go," she barked. There she stood, Karen Huxley, president of the Cedar Ridge, HOA, pastel cardigan, clipboard, chin lifted like she owned the entire valley. Her hair, shellacked to immobility, gleamed like a helmet in the morning light. "You built too close to our easement," she declared. "Per HOA bylaws section, this land isn't under your jurisdiction," I replied, calm, sipping my coffee. "Check the plat map." She smirked. "Oh, I already have. And you're trespassing. We'll fine you. We'll remove you. We'll sue if we must." My cabin sat on 5 wooded acres. My grandfather's survey pins were still hammered into the earth, cold iron buried beneath pine needles. But Karen's confidence was a weapon. She used it on every neighbor until they bent. "Not me. I'm not leaving," I said. She pushed a stack of papers into my chest. "You have 72 hours. Then she turned on her heel and marched back down the gravel. Tires spat stones as she sped off, leaving silence behind except for my coffee, still steaming. What just happened? That was day 1. Day 2 began with 2 men in orange vests, stringing neon tape across my driveway. "What are you doing?" I asked. "HOA told us this road isn't yours," one said. Not meeting my eye, I tapped the corner of my phone, the red light blinking, dashcam recording. Their eyes widened. They packed up fast. Day 3, the petty harassment arrived in waves. A bright pink violation flag jammed into my yard. A neon-printed $500 fine for unauthorized dwelling. A handwritten note, "Leave now or pay later." Karen liked theatrics. The petty tactics got creative. My mailbox vanished. A smear of bleach burned into my porch boards. Someone spray-painted a crooked arrow on the dirt road, reading, "Not yours." I didn't rage. I documented timestamps, photos, geotagged videos, by HOA bylaw section number. I mailed copies to myself for chain of custody. The first real clue arrived when I found my back survey pin, disturbed soil loose. Pine needles brushed aside. A bright ribbon had been tied to a tree 6 feet deeper into my land. They were trying to move my boundary on paper.classic, so I installed a small trail cam, hidden behind moss and bark. It captured the next trespass at 2:14 a.m. A figure in a cardigan, pulling stakes, dragging tape deeper into my woods, while muttering about easement expansion. Karen, in HD. Night vision. Clear as day. I watched the footage twice, jaw tight. She was going to regret that. I reached out to someone who'd pick up at any hour. My mother. Most folks don't know the law until they need it. My mother wrote half the county's property code as a judge before she retired. Calm voice, sharper than a surveyor's laser. When she answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. "She's moving pins," I said. Silence. Then, "I'll be up tomorrow. Keep gathering evidence." Karen escalated while I waited. 2 HOA board members marched up my steps like they owned oxygen. They slapped a bright orange condemnation notice onto my cabin. Unsafe structure, they claimed, despite the fact I built it to code and passed state inspection. The moment they left, I peeled it off and snapped photos. Section 14.08. Unlawful posting without municipal authority. Section 9.03. Trespass with intent to coerce. Documentation was mounting like stacked cordwood. That evening, headlights swept across the trees. Tires hissed onto gravel. A door slammed. My mother stepped out, black coat, hair tied back, eyes full of quiet fire. "Show me everything." We spread printed photos across the cabin table. Laptop open. Footage looping. She reviewed each image like she was presiding over hearing. "You have enough," she murmured. "But we'll get more." She tapped the plat map, finger landing on a thin dotted line. "This easement doesn't exist. They've fabricated an expansion." A chill traced my spine. Now it wasn't just harassment. It was fraud. Mom placed a file folder on the table. "Judges don't retire skills, they just store them in neater boxes." "Tomorrow," she said, "we go to war legally." The coffee pot sputtered behind us, outside, in the dark. A twig snapped. A silhouette stood at the tree line, watching. I flicked on the porch light. The figure fled, cardigan fluttering. Caught again. This time, on 4 cameras. Doorbell, porch, trail, and dash. The chain of proof tightened. I smiled, because Karen had just written her own ending, and she hadn't read the fine print. The next morning, the gravel crackled under another set of tires, this time a white SUV marked Cedar Ridge, HOA Compliance Division. 2 board members stepped out, clipboards raised like shields. Their jackets were stamped with a logo that looked official enough to trick a stranger. Per emergency board vote. One announced, "You are to vacate immediately. This cabin is a liability." I leaned against the porch rail, coffee warm in my hand. "You have no jurisdiction here." The second member smiled thinly. "We've updated the easement map." Ah, there it was. He handed me a printed map. Line shifted. Boundary nudged, just enough to appear like my cabin encroached on HOA land. "It's notarized," he added, smug. I held the paper up to the sunlight. "Funny, that notary stamp expired last year." His jaw twitched. Mom stood just behind me, arms folded, voice low and surgical. "Falsifying land records carries a maximum penalty of 5 years. Would you like to start that clock now?" Both men paled. "Have a nice day," she added. They retreated fast enough to kick dust. By noon, retaliation hit. A fine in my email inbox. Another nailed to my fence. A third slipped under my cabin door. All unsigned, all illegal. The accusations escalated from easement violation to unregistered dwelling to endangerment of community harmony. Harmony. Right. I screenshot every message, collected headers, saved digital signatures, and printed duplicates. Chain of custody folder grew thicker. Mom annotated margins with quiet fury. "Keep everything," she said. "Bullies drown in their own paperwork eventually." At dusk, I walked the northern property line with a flashlight. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. I crouched where the western survey pins should have been and found nothing but a shallow hole. Gone. The second pin also missing. My stomach tightened. Someone wasn't just moving markers. They were removing evidence. I swept the beam across the tree line. Fresh boot prints. Small, narrow pattern. Likely Karen's. I followed them 30 yards deeper into the woods. There, half hidden under leaves, lay both pins shoved into fresh soil to match the new map. "Gotcha." I snapped photos. Geotags embedded. Angles documented. Then I planted a tiny air tag beneath the soil, beside the original hole. Whoever came back would carry that breadcrumb trail. Mom's idea. Back inside, we watched the trail cam feed live. Video grainy, but clear enough to identify faces. At 11:47 p.m., movement triggered motion sensors. A lone figure crept across my yard. Cardigan swaying gloved hands digging to pull up the AirTag I'd buried. She pocketed it. Mom chuckled softly. "Fantastic." We pulled the tracking app up, watching a pulsing dot wander like guilty conscience. It moved to Karen's house. Stopped there. Evidence locked by morning. My cabin's access road was blocked by 3 orange cones and a laminated sign. Road closed. HOA safety inspection simply stepped around the cones and walked to town for breakfast. My truck stayed parked. Everything was on video when I returned. A deputy's cruiser sat in my driveway. Lights silent, engine idling. Deputy Torres stepped out, thumbs hooked into his belt. "Got a complaint you threatened HOA members," he said casually. "Funny," I replied, opening my folder. I was at Miller's Diner the entire morning. Time-stamped receipts. Camera footage. Witnesses. Torres nodded. He'd expected that. "But," he added, lowering his voice, "you're not the first person they've pulled this stunt on." Mom joined us. "Deputy, we have documentation of trespass, harassment, mail interference, fraudulent records, and witness intimidation." Torres exhaled. "Let me guess. You brought receipts." We handed over copies. He scanned them slowly, whistling under his breath. "I'll file these," he said. "Careful chain of custody. You'll want that." Then he leaned in. "They think you're alone. Let them keep thinking that." That evening, we set up the Sting Dot for cameras. One dash cam angled at the driveway gate. A GPS tracker on the mailbox post. We rigged a cheap motion sensor that pinged my phone whenever someone crossed the property line. Mom drafted 3 letters. 1, cease and desist. 1 injunction request. 1 complaint to the State Property Regulation Board. Each on official letterhead. We waited. Wind rustled the leaves. The woods whispered. The cabin lights glowed like a beacon. At 2:03 a.m., 3 figures crept toward the mailbox. Karen and 2 board members. They carried bolt cutters. I hit record. They snipped the bolts, lifted the box, tossed it into a trunk and drove off, red taillights slicing the dark. Federal crime. Mail tampering. Mom smiled without showing teeth. They just handed us felony leverage. The following morning, a crowd gathered near the HOA clubhouse, neighbors murmuring, holding flyers accusing me of squatting on protected community lands. Karen stood on the clubhouse steps, megaphone in hand, cardigan brighter than a hazard sign. This outsider refuses to comply. He's dangerous to our community values. She raised her chin triumphantly. Then a voice cut through the noise. Me, holding up my phone. You mean the night you stole federal property? That dangerous? I tapped play. Footage of bolt cutters, license plates, faces illuminated by headlights, gasps, whispers. Karen went gray. Mom stepped forward, folder tucked beneath her arm like a legal sword. We'll see you all, she announced. At tomorrow's injunction hearing. The crowd parted like we carried the plague, because legally, we kind of did. That morning of the injunction hearing smelled like rain and hot asphalt, the kind of storm that sweeps secrets out of the gutters. Mom and I arrived early, heels and boots clicking different rhythms down the courthouse hallway. I carried 2 folders, evidence and backup evidence. She carried one, amendments to the original property plat, inside the small courtroom. Karen perched at the defendant's table like a frantic bird. Her cardigan was a darker, nervous blue today. 2 HOA board members flanked her, whispering with their attorney, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Ramirez entered, gavel cracking like thunder. This hearing addresses allegations of trespass, harassment, property record tampering, and mail interference. Counsel, proceed. Karen's attorney jumped up. Your Honor, this man's cabin violates community easement. We are simply enforcing homeowner harmony. Harmony again. Mom stood, spine straight. Your Honor, Cedar Ridge HOA has no jurisdiction over my son's acreage. Furthermore, they have falsified boundary documents, removed government survey pins, tampered with federal mail, and posted illegal condemnation notices. She slid the trail cam images across the bench, time-stamped, GPS. Ramirez's brows lifted. Defendant, he said to Karen, care to explain why you are in night vision footage, relocating boundary markers on land not deeded to your HOA? Karen sputtered. That can't be me. Anyone could be wearing. Mom tapped a key on my laptop. The feed switched to dashcam. Karen's face full color, cardigan unmistakable, bolt cutters in hand. The courtroom murmured. Ramirez's gavel popped. Order. We weren't done. Deputy Torres stood from the gallery, holding a sealed evidence bag. Your Honor, GPS records confirm these items. He held up. 2 survey pins were removed and relocated by the defendant. Subject's phone geotags matched the timestamps. Ramirez leaned back. This is approaching criminal fraud. Karen's attorney paled. Mom lit the final fuse. In addition, she said, sliding forward a stamped letter, Cedar Ridge HOA attempted to expand an easement through an expired notary and forged signature. Gasps rippled. Even the board members stared at Karen in betrayal. The judge's voice hardened. Forgery of notarial commission is a felony. Mail interference is federal. Boundary manipulation constitutes real estate fraud. Karen trembled. We were only trying to preserve the neighborhood. Ramirez slammed the gavel. You don't preserve community by breaking the law. He signed 3 orders. 1. Immediate injunction against HOA contact. 2. Restitution fines to me. 3. Referrals to the district attorney and U.S. postal inspector. Karen's knees buckled. The board members swallowed hard. One quietly excused himself from the HOA on the spot. But we weren't done. Outside the courthouse's stone steps, neighbors waited. Rumors had spread faster than wildfire. Some offered apologies. Others avoided eye contact. Mom and I walked to the truck as rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady, washing away chalked HOA flyers from the sidewalk. Back at the cabin, a letter sat on my doorstep, this time with trembling handwriting. We're sorry. We didn't know. Karen always said she was right. Signed by 8 neighbors. I placed it gently in my folder. Evidence of intent mattered. By the next HOA meeting, the room was packed. Voices clashed, chairs scraped, and banners read. No more abuse of power. Karen, pale and quiet, stood at the front, microphone shaking. She tried to salvage dignity. We did what was necessary to protect The crowd erupted. You forged documents. You stalked people. You cost us thousands. Mom waited until the uproar settled. Then she approached the microphone. Voice calm. Community leadership requires transparency, not tyranny. The law exists to protect rights, not to bully neighbors. Pin drop silence. One by one. Board members raised hands. No confidence vote. Someone declared. Hands shot up around the room. Karen's voice cracked. You can't do this. But they already had. Effective immediately. She was removed. Aftermath always feels quieter. Months passed. The cabin remained standing, survey pins securely hammered into the earth, with official documentation recorded in county archives. The access road was paved by the county, with grant assistance. HOA had no say. Torres visited once more. Delivering the update, postal inspector filed charges. DA's office too. She's facing fines and probation. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it signs paperwork quietly. One evening, as sun bled orange across the tree line, I sipped coffee on the porch. Gravel crunched softly. Mom stepped out beside me. You handled this well, she said. I learned from the best. She smiled, the rare kind that reaches her eyes. Boundaries matter, not just on maps, but between people. Wind rustled the pines. Peace settled like dust. You staying for dinner? I asked. She shook her head, tapping her briefcase. I have another neighbor who thinks they're above the law. And just like that, she strode into the sunset boots, clicking, coat swaying, law following in her wake. I turned back, toward the cabin. Lights warm, ground secure, community calmer. Let bullies push and they fall off the cliff edge. They carved. If you've got a story about boundary bullies or HOA power plays, drop it below. We'll be ready.